Hey, it's Hugh. Look, I'm excited in this video to talk you through a coaching approach that I use with some of my clients. And it's based on my own behavior change model, which I creatively call the How to Change Anything model. And the beauty of this model is it can be used for individual change or performance improvement or any goal that you've got to give you clarity and commitment and the capability, the capacity, and the conscientiousness. There are 5 C's that you need to make that change happen. You can use it in your team as well if you're trying to mature the performance of a team. And you can also use it to transform an entire organization. Whatever the case may be, these are 5 things which all humans need in order to make change happen successfully. So what I'm going to do in this session is just take you through a guided coaching set of questions. So for you to get the best out of this, or to make it worthwhile, is to grab a pen and paper and to write down your answers to each of these questions. And there are 5 key parts. And so I'm going to talk through each one. I'll tell you when we're up to each part and just write down some rough notes. It's almost like a journaling exercise at first, where you're just getting your thoughts down on a piece of paper. You can go back and clarify and edit and rewrite later, and that gives you even more clarity. But it's all about the thinking process. A lot of what you need is already in your brain. You just don't know it yet because they haven't put it on paper, which is the crystallization of your thinking. So if you grab a piece of paper and a pen right now, if you need to pause this to do that, do it now and come back. And we're going to start with understanding what the change is that you're trying to implement, either for yourself, for your team, or your organization. So the first step is that clarity. So write down, what is your vision for success for either yourself, your team, or your organization? Whatever the thing is that you need to work on. What is your vision of success? Now, what a vision is an outcome that should inspire you in the future. So it could be 6 months from now, it could be a year, 3 years, 10, 20 years, as long as you want it to be, as long as it's useful. Now, I think often as you're thinking about this vision and just pondering it, is make sure it's ambitious enough. Make sure it's something you see and it scares you a little bit, and it also gets you excited. And you just think, wow, if I achieve this vision and this becomes a reality for me in the future, man, I'm going to be really happy with that. And I'm going to be excited by it. It's going to energize me day to day if I just take small steps in this direction. So what's your vision for yourself or your team or your organization? Whatever your goal is, it can be either of those, your team, individual, or organization. And what does success look and feel like to you? So imagine you've achieved this vision, and you've changed something about yourself or what's around you and the outcomes you're experiencing, and you're realizing this success. What does that look and feel like to you? I imagine it probably feels pretty good, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. But write down the words that specifically describe the feelings that come up for you when you're imagining achieving this vision. So what does that mean to you? And that's sort of giving you a sense. And go into a creative zone. When you're visioning, what you need to be doing is going into your creative part of your brain. You need to be pausing and not looking at anything around you and just trying to imagine that future. It's something we humans can do that no other animals can do. We can see things that aren't there, right? We just can create a future from that. And we can imagine that, and we can inspire and create art and businesses and all sorts of things for ourselves as a result of that. So you need to tap into that part of the brain, that creative zone. What does that look and feel like for you? Now think about if we're moving to the left brain, what is the success metric? Like, what's the key metric? Maybe there's a few, but if you think about one key metric, and I often say, what is a metric? When people ask me, it's really just an outcome, which could be your vision, but with a number, a percentage, or a deadline attached to it. And that's what makes it measurable. But particularly that number and that percentage. How much, by when, or by what percentage? What are you going to see change in your life that's measurable? It could be anything. Could be financial, could be to do with something else, could be to do with a weekly habit, like how many times a week you're doing something. One thing I set in my exercise metric is to exercise between 3 and 4 times a week, targeted exercise. That's one of my health and fitness metrics for success. And that supports what the vision of me looking like and feeling like in, 5-10 years from now as a fit, healthy, middle-aged person. To achieve that vision for myself, I need to exercise 3 to 4 times a week. That might not be yours, but that's just an example. What's something measurable? It could be a lead indicator, a weekly measure like that, which keeps you in a good habit. Or it could be, just to continue the fitness analogy, if I said I want to lose 3 kilos by the end of next month, that's measurable. That's not just saying, I want to get fitter and healthier. It's like I've got a specific metric. So it could be you want less or more of something in your life, and that's kind of measurable. And how much less and how much more do you want in your life of that thing, or in your business or in your team? So that's the metrics. And so what this should be getting for us is understanding this change that you want to achieve. And this is what I call clarity. It's the first step in the model. So just to recap, it's like, what's your vision for success for this thing you want to achieve? What's the key success metric? Now, part of this might be another way to look at this in a third dimension. I don't mind sometimes adding in if it helps you. Is what's the problem that you're addressing? And that's just another reframing. So problems are the same as opportunities in some ways. And the vision is maybe the opportunity. And the problem is like, why do you need to go after this vision? So it's just a different way of framing it. What's the problem this addresses? What's the thing that you're not quite satisfied with at the moment that's making you want this thing that you're willing to go after, or this change you're trying to make? That could be another thing to write down, still in the clarity row here in this model. So once we've got clarity, what we should be having is an understanding of this problem that we're trying to address, why we want to do something about this thing and chase this thing down. And then the vision, which is the thing we really, really want, which should be inspiring. It should be ambitious, a little bit scary and motivating. And what's the key success metric, which is how do we know when we're there, or how do we track that we're on the right track week to week? And if your vision isn't ambitious, then that's not really going to get much out of you. It's not going to excite you and get you to make a change in what you're doing. If it's a little bit scary, and it's going to be more engaging, and it's going to create a certain alertness and engagement in what you're doing. If you're saying, well, my vision is just to get through next quarter, then I'm challenging you to ramp up the success level in that. What's something significant that you could achieve by next quarter? Or what's a way of being for you in next quarter? And what's that vision of what that looks like for you? Will be maybe a couple of extra questions I'd challenge you with there. So that's clarity. That's the first thing you need when you're making a change happen. Understand the problem to solve and the vision for success, and what's the metric which you need to track and define when you get there. The second thing people need to make change successfully is commitment. Now, commitment is a state of mind, and I think it's a force multiplier when it comes to change. Too often we sort of say, I'd like to do that thing one day, and you never do anything about it. And we're not really committed. We have this sort of flash in our brain of, maybe one day I could try that, or, my team could potentially achieve this, but I don't know, I'm just going to keep doing the same thing. And that's not commitment. Commitment is comprised, I think, of 3 things. And Dr. Valerie Hoover in America, a psychologist there, she researched ambivalence when it comes to change. Things we know which are kind of, we should do, but we don't go and do it. We have this ambivalence to change. And she said, it's because we don't think it's important enough, and we don't feel confident to do it, or both. And I think those 2 things are important for commitment. So we have to think this thing is important, which is conscious thinking, and we have to feel confident that we can do it. So we have to think it's achievable. We have to back ourselves, and that's kind of a decision to make. But I think there's also a third element, which is to be engaged in action towards it. And sometimes that means engaging support and assistance, or a team, or a mentor, a coach, or a group of people to collaborate, and that sort of creates this energy and momentum and action. And then because there's that social pressure around us, which is being engaged in this goal, that actually radically increases our chances of being committed to it and feeling committed to it. We're so influenced by what's around us. So if we want to raise our commitment, we need people around us who are also committed or are signing up to the task. So that's why I think being engaged in action is the third element there. So it's to think it's important, to feel confident to do it, and be engaged in action. So it's like a think, feel, do, or be. So I want you to write down what's important about this goal you have, this vision you want to achieve. Why is it so important to you? And really ramp this up. I want you to amplify it in the words. Don't be afraid. It might make you feel a bit, insufficient at the moment, but that's kind of okay. We want to feel a bit discontent because we're not where we want to be just yet. So write down, why is this thing important? So when you got that written down, write down, how confident do you feel to make it happen? Maybe write a number out of 10 in terms of your confidence level. How confident do you feel to make this thing happen? And if it's like a 6 or 7, then write down, what would it take to feel maybe closer to an 8 or 9 or even a 10? What's going to help you feel more confident in making it happen? And the third thing is, how can you become engaged in action to get you more committed to this? So you're not just doing the same thing you were doing yesterday, but what can you start today or tomorrow that's going to have you engaged in making even small steps towards this vision that you have, this inspiring vision that you've set for yourself? What can you do tomorrow, today, immediately to be engaged in that action? Another way to ask this, or another thing to address that helps those three dimensions, is why can't you just let the status quo stay in place? That'll help you sort of work out the importance of this. Think about that for a moment. Why can't you let the status quo remain? The more we think there's a problem, the more open we are to making change happen, the more committed we are. So sometimes you got to talk about the problem and just go, I can't let this happen. This is too much of a problem. Remind yourself, don't accept the status quo, but talk about the problem in the status quo, and that makes you want to move and do something about it. Now, do you have any potential beliefs, self-limiting beliefs, which are holding back your confidence with this? You might be saying, I don't feel confident. I'm only a 5 out of 10 in confidence. But is that really the case? Challenge yourself there. Is there a self-limiting belief holding you back? A self-limiting belief is something like, I could never do that, or I'm not very good with talking to senior executive people, so I couldn't get that promotion. Or the labor market's so tough at the moment that I just can't get the people I need to make that goal successful. Is that true? Does it have to be true? And can you challenge that belief? What's a different belief? How can you flip that belief around, maybe turn it into the opposite, so that it actually helps you and drives constructive action towards your goal? So that's commitment. The reason we're talking about commitment is when we are fully committed, it's like we see the change as there's no other option. There's no alternative but to change. And Sun Tzu, who's the famous Chinese general and philosopher who wrote the book The Art of War about 1,000 years ago, famously instructed the generals to tell their soldiers to burn the boats and bridges behind them as they advance into enemy territory. And as terrifying as that is, and maybe it's not entirely relevant to the modern world where I think we need to be building boats and bridges and adapting to ongoing conditions, the thing I love about it is that they, even 1,000 years ago, they recognize the incredible power and discretionary effort that comes from being 100% committed. When those soldiers had no other choice but to fight their hearts out on the battlefield, that's what they do. They had no choice. They couldn't run away. And so when we sort of see that, when we sort of double down and talk up and load up in our minds about this problem, this status quo, like we can't let this happen, I'm not going to allow this to happen, then that makes us committed to this vision. And when we talk about the vision in an inspiring, exciting way, that also makes us highly committed to going and do something about it. So we want to see the current state as no longer acceptable. And we want to see this vision for the target state as something which excites us, and we're just on a mission to achieve it. So that's commitment. That's the second element of this model. Now, the third thing people need to make change happen is capability. Capability is made up of knowledge and skills, and there's a journey there to go on to get to a level of mastery in this thing that you're trying to achieve. There may be sort of certain abilities you need to build up or get in the practice of doing so that you can really get this mastery level to get to where you need to go. Now, the entry level is you start as a novice, then you build some basic knowledge. Then when you apply that knowledge, then you start to get the skill. And when you repeat that skill, it becomes a habit. And when you repeat that habit over time, you get to mastery. And the analogy I like to give here is learning to play golf. I could get onto a YouTube channel and see an expert professional golfer show me how to hold the club, where to look with the ball, where to put my feet, how to breathe, the backswing, the follow through, all that sort of stuff. And I can learn the knowledge of how to hit a golf ball. But does that mean when I get out on the green for the first time that I'm going to tee off and hit it 200 meters straight down the fairway? Probably not. The first time I get out there, I'm going to be shanking him. I'll probably miss the ball because I don't yet have the skill. I might have got the knowledge, the how-to, but you don't get the skill until you practice and you do it. And then you've hit thousands of balls and played many, many times. Then you start to get the skill and you can say, yeah, I've got the skills to hit a golf ball, to play golf. But then over time, you repeat that. Maybe you play 3 times a week and then it becomes habitual. You're doing this thing regularly. The practice of that skill leads you to what is the top level of capability, which is mastery. And that can only happen with repetition over time. So that's my explanation of capability. Now, my questions to you, back to your vision and the metrics that you want to achieve that define this change for you, is what are the capabilities you need? So what is the new knowledge that you might need to make this change happen? What is the knowledge you need to make this change happen? And what's the kind of skills or practice that follows that you're going to need as well? So there might be a new habit you need to put in place to continually practice this thing until you get better at it. It might be something you can't learn overnight. When I changed a slight shift in career 8 or 9 years ago, I joined this consulting business and I had to learn how to do business development, sales and marketing in the business and to grow this business. So I had to have sort of general management ability, which I hadn't done before, but that's part of the reason why I took the leap. And so what I did, I knew I needed sales and marketing knowledge and I immersed myself in that. So I read books on sales, on consulting and professional services, how to sell and market a business, podcasts, audio books, you name it. And I was reading all this stuff and then I was coming into work and I was applying it and trying to, improve our proposals and the process for how we did sales and so forth. And so that was me sort of putting my own capability building plan in place over 6 to 12 months in this role. And I got a whole lot better. And then I started to get results with that. So I had this clear vision. I was going to become excellent at selling and growing a consulting business or selling consulting services. And so, but I had to practice it. So I had to put these things into practice, go and learn it, start practicing it each week, apply it to my vision and my goal. That's just my example. You might have a different vision, of course. And so what is the thing you need to do? What knowledge do you need to immerse yourself in? And what's the skill? What's the practice you need to get in? Because if you don't start practicing and doing things differently, then nothing's going to change. And so you got to practice the skill. Sometimes with your vision and your goal, it's not about the tasks you need to do. It's about who you need to become as a leader. And to become that leader, you might need to build some knowledge. You might need to put that knowledge into practice. And that's how you become it. Some people often say that leadership isn't something you become or do or be, or you don't get promoted into leadership. It's actually a practice. So leadership is something you do. It's not something you are necessarily. So people might say I'm a good leader, but then if I have 2 weeks where I'm not really doing anything that's regarded as leadership, I'm not taking any risks, I'm not trying to influence, then am I really a leader? It's hard. It's a debatable thing, right? And to me, it doesn't really matter. What matters is, well, it doesn't matter whether I'm a leader or not. It matters, well, did I practice leadership today? Did I take a bold step into driving change in the organizations I serve and in myself? Did I try and elevate the people around me today? And so that's just an example of sort of leadership as a practice. But you're achieving your vision, there's some sort of practice around that, which is going to help you get there as well, which is the capability building. And leaders are always practicing, and that's sort of one of the definitive things about leadership. So that's capability. What's the knowledge you need, and what's the skill and the practice that you need to put in place? The fourth thing you need is what I call capacity. Now, sometimes capacity gets used interchangeably with capability. I think they're slightly different. And, or at least the way I think about capacity is really about time and priorities. So it's having space for this thing to happen. If you continually do the same thing that you did last week, you're probably going to get similar results to last week. At least you'll be the same kind of person. You might be working a few different things. If you make time to, take steps forward towards this different state of being, this new vision you have, then you're going to be one step closer to that vision. So it requires you to free up time. When are you going to allocate time in your week to take steps towards this vision? For example, how are you going to sustain your commitment? Do you remind yourself of this vision every Monday morning, perhaps, so that you go and launch into your week with a sense of excitement? The clarity is reinforced in your brain, this vision. You come in inspired to your job and you feel committed and you know what you've got to do that day and every day that week. Maybe you do that every day and you free up capacity to do that. So you're prioritizing the thing. Maybe there's on the learning thing we just talked about, capability building. Maybe it's freeing up a couple of hours every single week to do that learning, to do the knowledge building and to the experimentation of the practice. And that's often required. So I often say, particularly when we're trying to get fit and healthy, I'm sure I've done this many times when you make excuses about it. Your health is important, but at the end of the week, you haven't exercised and you look back and go, why didn't I exercise? I didn't have time, right? But we know that means I just didn't prioritize it, or I don't value it enough, or something more important came up. And maybe that's the case, but we have to be honest with ourselves about that. And so one of the best ways to get it done is to say, well, I'm going to exercise at 5:30 on Monday, 5:30 on Wednesday, and whatever, 10 a.m. on a Friday, or whenever that you're going to do it, and commit to that spot. So I'm creating capacity in my diary, in my schedule, in my calendar to do the thing that needs to be done, the practice, the steps which are going to get me closer to that vision. So when are you going to do the things that you've got to do? So some of that, by the way, to make change, it requires sacrifice. So you might have to let go. You might look at your week and go, I'm full of, everything's just full. It's like, okay, well, what you need to embrace is sacrifice. Some of those things are not as important as the big vision you have for yourself. Otherwise, this vision, the reason you're talking about this vision and wanting it to happen, or talking about this problem you need to solve, is because it's important to you. And you need to prioritize it. That means sacrificing something else at some points during your week, your month, your quarter, whenever it is, to get yourself closer to it. So what are you going to sacrifice? Maybe write that down as well. How and when are you going to tackle this thing? What are you going to sacrifice? That's capacity. So think about that. And that might be a bigger challenge for some visions and goals that you have, and less of a challenge for others, because you might already have the time allocated. It's just a matter of doing it within those timings that you've got. So I think it's the key thing we need, particularly in transforming an organization. Capacity is one of the big things, because everyone will say, everyone's at capacity. We don't have time for these new change programs to implement, and when the hell are we going to do it? So I often say to leaders, okay, we've got to work out what you're going to disrupt. You're going to have to disrupt business as usual operations, or you're going to have to deprioritize less important projects and prioritize this transformation initiative. So often have those conversations with leaders to help them do that and just get them to be realistic, because often they'll say, oh, we've got too much on, we don't have time. So I say, well, do you want this most important thing to happen or not? Let's free up the time. So that's capacity. We need to free up time and prioritize our thing. The fifth and final thing we need to achieve this vision and these metrics we're setting out to achieve, and just to reiterate, we had the clarity at the top, which is your vision, the problem to solve, the key metric which defines success. We had commitment, which is about thinking it's important, feeling confident that we can do it, and being engaged in action. Capability, which is about knowledge and skill building, new habits, and continuing those to get to mastery. Capacity, which is about time and prioritization. When are you going to do the thing? And the fifth element is conscientiousness, which is kind of a personality or a character trait. But for me, in this model, it's about a little bit more than that. It's about that kind of conscious follow through to embed and turn the change into your new way of being. It's like the new you. How do you sustain it and continue the repetition and the habits so that you become, this new version? And also involved in that is like, how do you track progress? Like, how do you track progress and measure when you're actually there? And is it something you need to sustain while you're there? For example, we talked about the fitness example. You may have a particular goal, but really once you reach that goal, you kind of want to sustain that level of fitness, right? So it's about keeping the habit up. You might have a goal in your executive role to be better at managing your stress and balance and being really productive and effective with your time. And so you might reach that point where you get to that, when you go, cool, I've achieved my vision. I've got these metrics where I'm only working a certain number of hours each week, and that's measurable. And I'm spending plenty of time with my kids, that's measurable, or my significant other, or doing the thing that I love for a number of hours each week, and that's measurable, and you've kind of got that. But then there's a conscientious effort needed to sustain it, because it's easy to slip back into the old way and drop it, that thing that's important to you. So you want to kind of make a change. You sort of unfreeze and then freeze the new way of being into your life. And then you make another change and you unfreeze and you step up, and you're continually stepping up. And this is what all these little changes can do, is just continually make you a better person, a better leader, better business operator, whatever the case may be. But you got to make them stick, and before you're changing into the next one. So that's why I say there's this conscientious effort required to continue doing this thing so that it becomes second nature. You don't have to even think about it anymore. It just becomes who you are. And that's how you know you've truly achieved your vision of success and the metrics you're trying to achieve. Change isn't just a once off. It's like a reset. For me, it's a stepping up into a new level. Particularly when we're instigating it ourselves. It's not always the case when it's being foisted upon us by a company we work for, perhaps, and it wasn't our idea. Then we've got to work out our own change approach to deal with that, and we can own that. But when it's usually for us, it's about taking this vision we have for ourselves and achieving it, and then sustaining it. So that's conscientiousness. And what reinforcement mechanisms, by the way, can you establish to make it stick? Certain things you can do that helps you just keep that thing alive once you've achieved it, and continue that habit. So they're the 5 things I think people need to make change happen. We all need this, whether it's individuals, teams, or organizations. Clarity about the change, commitment to the change, the capability to make the change happen and sustain it, the capacity, the time priorities to make the change happen, and the conscientious follow through to embed it and make it the new way. That's 5 C's. I hope you've enjoyed this coaching session, and hope you wrote down some good answers there. As I said, it's just a brainstorm. You can go back and rewind and watch this again and again and again, and do it for every goal and everything you want to do. And you can also do it with other people. Feel free to use it with other people and attribute it to me, ideally. But feel free to use it on your team members And I hope it helps you. If you've got any feedback about it, I'll welcome it. Share it in the comments or send me an email or a note. I'm interested in your feedback. If there's anything missing or any questions about it, happy to answer those as well. Good luck with your change.